to be good because on this platform we believe everybody's opinion matter. That's why it's called the Empowering Perspective platform, right? So we believe that we're all subject matter experts of our own perspective. So that being said, go ahead and put your perspective in the chats, and whatever questions you have, by all means, go ahead and ask them, and we'll make sure that we'll acknowledge them. Sandra W, good to see you. Lisa Keys, good to see you. Katana Kelly, good to see you. Again, wherever you are, just make sure that you reach out and just let us know that you're there. Now, that said, we're going to get this party started. Have you ever wondered how deeply ingrained biases and limiting beliefs shape the experiences of Black fathers and their families in our society? Welcome to the Hearts of Men, where we'll discuss what they don't tell you about being a dad in the diaspora. In this episode, we explore unique challenges faced by Black fathers amidst the backdrop of historical trauma, economic pressures, and societal stereotypes. Our aim is to uncover the hidden struggles, celebrate the resilience, and inspire change through enlightening and revolutionary discussions. Join us as we seek heightened awareness, challenge unconscious biases, and redefine the narrative of Black fatherhood for a brighter future. Now, I think, in my opinion, this conversation comes at the perfect time because if you guys recall, pick me back full screen, thank you. If you guys recall, we just got finished with Mother's Day. So I just kind of want to put it out there and get everybody's perspective, everybody's feedback, because I'm very curious in your opinions. So when it comes down to, bring up the first question, please. When it comes down to, not I'm up on the disclaimer, not that first point. There we go. When it comes down to the societal difference between Mother's Day and Father's Day, what differences have you observed from your own perspective?
Man, I'm gonna jump out there because you trying to get messy early. Um, for all the mothers out there in the chat, I think it's perfectly dynamic the way it's supposed to be. I love you, but to my brothers, yeah, it's a little lopsided. Uh, nah, but all joking aside, I think the differences that you see, which is, of course, we go all out for Mother's Day. Um, and for Father's Day is always a good tie or a good pair of socks, that is uh given as a token, right? You might get breakfast or you might get something like that, but normally it's not as much of a celebration. Um, but I think in part of it is also because a lot of us men are a little more content with less. I'll put it like that. But
You said, I thought you said, but like you would continue.
Me too.
Okay. I think it's a drastic difference. Usually you see the mothers would get something that she wants, something she desires, something that she's been waiting all year for, so that she can be happy with it. While fathers get things that they can use to edify the whole house. They get a grill, they get some tools, they get something to use versus something that he actually wants. It's cool that we gonna get a grill, but then I got to go out back and barbecue. I got to use whatever I'm getting, some tools to manage the household, not necessarily something that I would want if you do that type of thing. So I think the considerations are totally opposed.
Man, I don't know.
your mama on here before you get started. Just want to let you know. I saw her in the chat.
Yeah. Charlotte Jordan. So I think there is a difference. I think that we do see more of an emphasis being placed on Mother's Day. When we look at the gift do seem to be more something that they want, but it also seems like Mother's Day comes with a little bit more pressure as well. And a lot of times that pressure is coming from the mother, right? They have an expectation based off some Disneyland or based off some social media or based off of something that they see out in the world and say, this is how a mother is supposed to be treated on Mother's Day. You know, my kids are supposed to get up in the morning, they're supposed to fix me breakfast. And I'm supposed to be pampered all day. I'm supposed to go to the spa, whatever it is, all of these different things. So, you know, even I think some of the mothers have an expectation of what they want on Mother's Day. So, whereas the fathers are kind of like, I really don't care. You know what I mean? But it's not that we don't care. It's just like with anything else, we just want to be appreciated. Like, really don't care about the gifts or anything like that. But like, don't ask me to cook out on Father's Day, right? Like, at least have enough decency to like not ask me to do something like that. Like, most people don't ask mom to cook on Mother's Day. Like, she usually get breakfast in bed in the morning, and then usually in the evening the kids going to take her out to her restaurant of her choosing or liking or something like that in the evening, or maybe even lunch, and then maybe the husband may take her out later on or something like that. So I think that's kind of sometimes maybe why there's a difference. You know, maybe there's more pressure on the mom side, more of an expectation, whereas on the dad side, really don't care, just kind of want to be appreciated, and just, you know, sometimes we just be rather just leave us alone and give us a couple bowls of syrup and let us play the game all day long. You know what I'm saying? So, just to be honest.
I don't know if my brother's in a position where he can respond right now, but Bricks, if you are, just jump in wherever you can. Um, I'm noticing a common thread here. I'm noticing a thread that suggests that fathers, they really don't want much. Like, they're content with the minimalistic aspects of whatever it is they can provide or whatever's done. Garfield, I like the fact that you mentioned that we just want to be appreciated. Um, but I still think that you guys was y'all pulling punches, y'all pulling strings right now. I will start with the advertising aspects of it. I think for the most part, when you look at it, Mother's Day is advertised way back here to let you know it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, and then next thing you know, it's upon us. And so you get all types of advertisements about jewelry, you get all types of advertisements about flour, you got clothes that go on sale, you got all these different things that is happening because Mother's Day is like right around the corner. I will be completely transparent. Father's Day snuck up on me this year. Now, I'm not really one that watches a whole lot of TV, so, maybe if I was just happen to be looking at, I don't know, HGTV or something like that, if I was looking at that, or if it was a football game on something of that nature, then maybe a Father's Day commercial would have came on. But just like regular primetime TV, I'm not 100% convinced. And again, like I say, I don't watch TV, so I don't have any evidence to support it. But I just
Yeah.
don't think Father's Day is advertised as widely as Mother's Day is advertised.
Well, I think part of it is where it lies in the calendar. Like, I'm always open to any perspective. So
Mhm.
as I was sitting here thinking about where it lines up in the calendar, you know, pretty much after Easter or even before Easter, you know, they're starting Mother's Day stuff, right? But then right after Mother's Day, the next month you have Father's Day. So you only have a short amount of period to advertise, but everybody's still high off Mother's Day, and they didn't spend all the month on Mother's Day. You know what I'm saying? So it may have something to do with the timeline. Like I said, I'm open to all perspectives and different points of views. But
Well, I think marketing starts with children first and then women. And
mm,
when you can capture their minds and attention, daddy's check overall goes there to please other people. And then when it comes to him, it's like, who gonna please daddy? Oh, daddy gonna get that tie or get that big razor or something. He's an afterthought. Father's Day, when it comes when it comes to the holidays, Father's Day is the Black history of holidays when it comes to things showing affection. It's an afterthought.
Hmm.
Here's here's the crazy thing. It goes deeper than Father's Day on the low. My first child was a boy. Um, I noticed when it was time to go shopping and buy my son some clothes, I had two aisles. or tracks in Walmart, but 2 hours in most stores for boys' baby stuff. But the baby stuff was like 8 hours worth of clothes, but only 2 of them were for boys. You get what I'm saying? It's like it's this disparity in just recognize manhood. Period. Even for boys, is like, unless you want to go find games or toys, there's a bunch of toys, but to go shopping to buy them shirt, it's not that they don't get creative. There's not options. The thought process is not heavy behind what we do for men or for boys. So when it comes to Father's Day, it's almost like we don't have anything to happen and give it no thought. It's almost like in the back room, in the back room during the marketing meetings, they're getting creative. They're thinking hard, like as soon as Mother Day ends, on what they're gonna do next year. But for us, we miss the entire, or not even miss. We get the same concept, because it's like, well, what can you do for men? What can you do for boys? Well, let's advertise these power tools. Let's put them on sale, $5 less. But there's nothing. There's nothing behind it, and there's no engine pushing it, saying, "Hey, our fathers are here. Let's celebrate them." But that's all I.
I got boys, I raised boys. I think some of the difference is the types of clothes that's offered to boys versus girls. Like with boys, you got pants, you got shorts, and that's it, right? But with girls, you got pants, shorts, now you got dresses, you got skirts, you got leggings, and everything in between. So there's a larger variety of the types of clothes that women wear versus what men wear. And it's not to take away anything. I do also agree with everything that you said, but also want to throw it in there.
This is interesting. This is an interesting perspective, and I like, Gaddy, I like your point of view with it, because I think the way it should be, I think both parties should be celebrated. I think both mothers and fathers should be celebrated. But I think it's obvious, and sometimes we kind of deceive ourselves because we're caught up into the conditioning, and we just think it as the norm that mothers are celebrated a whole lot more than fathers, and that's okay. And then we go along with it, and we accept it as a norm, and so we become a kind of like a bi party of the entire concept, and then we kind of, in some degree, carry that whole mantra going forward. So I think when it comes down to this, and keep your questions coming. I got your questions. Christian, great question. Lisa, I got your question as well. And we're going to definitely get to them. I think for the most part, when we're completely transparent and we're completely honest with ourselves, I think there is a clear and obvious difference between the two, right? And it's not just from a marketing concept. And Garfield, I'm gonna go back to what you said. I get the fact, I get the notion that marketing falls within a certain time frame on the calendar, but I can look at a TV show, a TV program, and I can see 5 different things being advertised during that commercial break. So for me, and this is not against you, but for me, I'm not willing to accept that as a perspective, because there's too much evidence out there that says that that's not, a reality. I can look at a TV show and I get a Betty Crocker commercial, and then shortly after that, you'll get, I don't know, a brand new car commercial. So there are too many. You see what I'm saying? So if we're saying that they can't market both at the same time, I don't think that's a accurate perspective. Um, Although it does fall on the calendar in that particular time frame. Going back to, I think it was Ravonda who said that generally Father's Day during the marketing plan happens right around the beginning of summer. And she says that they advertise things for summer, home improvement, so forth and so on. Absolutely. I do agree with that 100%. But to take that and tie it to Father's Day and say, buy daddy a brand new lawnmower, buy him some hedge trimmers and stuff of that nature. Sure, I get that, because it could be a marketing campaign to get the stuff in Lowe's and Home Depot and stuff like that off the shelf. I get that 100%, and that makes a whole lot of sense. However, there's some other things that we can do for fathers as well, and how to get those things off the shelves. So I'm just looking at it, and again, I'm playing devil's advocate, y'all, just so that you guys know. I'm just looking at it from a holistic perspective and trying to understand collectively, why do we think that that's the case, and why do we think it exists in that realm? Silence. Okay, very well. So let's, I tell you what, let's go with the historical concept then, right? So we'll start with the historical context and its impact on modern fatherhood. And so the first question I kind of want to present there, and everybody might want to duck when these guys start answering this. How have historical events such as slavery, segregation, and migration influenced the roles and responsibilities of fatherhood within the diaspora today?
All right, so I'm gonna tell you like this: history and all of this stuff. I didn't grow up learning very deeply about these different topics and these different slavery, segregation, migration, different things like that. So for me, what I wrote down was confusion and opportunity, those two words. So with this and getting older, I have learned a bunch of different perspectives about slavery, segregation, migration, and it has caused a certain level of confusion in my own in my own life, right? And then, but it has also caused an opportunity for me to learn more. So I know I'm going to be learning a lot from all of these gentlemen today. So I'm really looking forward to that. But with that being said, when there is confusion, sometimes you don't necessarily understand what your roles are and what your responsibilities of a father is. So what you're doing is you're looking back and say, okay, well, how was I fathered? And then this is maybe what I take into myself as being a father. Then I may see the Cosby Show, right? And then I may be watching that growing up, and I'm like, okay, but look how Bill Cosby treated his kids. And then, so I may remember some of those things as as an adult and as a father, and I may incorporate some of those things into my being a parent. And then I may go back and look at, how my may find out more information about my father's father and see how he parented. So, and then look at how things were done during slavery time and segregation and what went on and stuff. And, I just think for me, it has caused a lot of confusion and opportunity. And I've just tried to take a bunch of different pieces from a bunch of different events to try to incorporate that into my being a parent. And I think I just got off track with something else. So
No, you didn't. And I wanna pin right there, and I'm gonna give everybody else the opportunity to answer the same question. But what I want to do is take Christian Barrow's question and put it on the backside of what you answered, and have you answer his question as well. And then I want each of you, after you give your perspective, to respond to this as well individually. So Garfield, in your opinion, is Father's Day looked down upon by culture? And now, again, remember, this comes on the backside of confusion and opportunity, right? I want you to answer from that perspective, sir.
yeah, like right here, I don't necessarily think that it's looked down upon. I just I think in certain sections it's overlooked. Like it's not really a big deal. It's like, well, it's just another day. I don't really think it really gets the amount of respect or the same level of respect and attention that in comparison to Mother's Day.
Very well. Appreciate that. Gentlemen.
Yes, it's looked down upon. Plain and simple. And I think there are reasons for that, because culturally we are systematically taught that the father's place in the family is almost obsolete. Provide, protect. If you're there, you ain't there, we can handle it. So he becomes like a piece of furniture almost. So when it comes to that portion, I think yes, definitely, because it's a systematic training in order for us to look at the man a certain way. And, I'm not here to argue that because we're talking about Father's Day. And when it comes to Father's Day in the historical context, when it comes to slavery, I think you got to go even further back than that, because the Father's Day and Mother's Day both come out of pagan worship, when you were worshiping Baal or Baal, or however people want to say it, and Ashtoreth, which were pagan gods coming out of Babylon. And that's where you get Easter and so forth and so on. And you can look these things up. People just too lazy to do so. So they think, oh, this is American custom. No, it was here way beforehand. And what they would do is they would worship these deities. And that's why come June, when the sun is going at its highest, that you're looking at sun god worshipers worshiping the father of sun gods. And that is Baal or Baal. And when they worshiped him then, they would do certain things. But now we have to make it seem like, okay, it's about the fathers in the home. But the way you twist it, even now we'll twist scripture and we'll repeat it like we reading it. And we'll say, honor thy mother and thy father, when it says honor thy father and mother. But we flip it because we always put the emphasis on the female, on the mother, because she's the nurturer and all these other things. And we hold her in high esteem, Mother Mary. And the fathers are just depicted as, like I said before, almost pieces of furniture.
Man, first of all, Roland, you said a mouthful, and Coach, I appreciate you and Brother Christian for these questions, because one, it's so easy for us to look and say, because fathers are absent, blah 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 blah, but the question leads us to, how did we get here, or what is the historical context behind everything? And when you so first, for brother both my brothers, right? Yes, I believe for a large portion that it is frowned upon, but I believe that is just more an afterthought, right? But it goes and it goes to the aspect of we teach, and very large in our community mostly, but we teach empowerment, education, and career to our women, right? We teach it, and then we teach it from the narrative, so you don't need no man, right? And for our men, what do we teach? You chase the woman, right? So this disparity of thought process of how we think about the fatherhood, right? It's already distorted, and that's just for us. That's for our generation. But now, when we go back and we look at, let's take slavery in perspective. To me, we're just getting to a generation to where we can make real change in the effects from slavery, because when you talk about snatching children from their parents, selling them off to other families, or just separating them so that the family structure does not build up to keep the strength from the slaves, you have that happening. Mothers and fathers being separated, husbands and wives being separated or killed for being married, and more times than not, the women are kept to do what? To care for to care for master's children, right? But they also cared for all the children that were in the plantation. At least this is what we're taught, right? In the homes is what I was taught. But where's the stories about the fathers? There were none. They were in the fields. They were the hands. They were doing everything other than being a part of the family structure, because there wasn't supposed to be one. So now when we go from there, and then we free a bunch of slaves, well, we freed a bunch of slaves, but the families were already separated. So now we're at a point in time to where It's like when we start building families, how do I be a father? We never saw it in our time here in the diaspora. We never saw it. So now that we start to build these families and we start to build a culture that gets torn down, burned down. So much is going on to where we're now, I believe we're now building the stability to where it's like, this is really maybe first or second generation that can truly have something to lean on to know how to be fathers. And so we're learning it along the way. That's how I see it.
I'm loving everybody's perspective because I agree with everybody across the board. I do believe that there is a lot of confusion that exists. There's confusion that exists around the family structure. There's confusion that exists around what fatherhood looks like. There's confusion that exists when it comes down to identity and all of that. In fact, for me, I take this back to where we was talking about this indirectly for weeks now. We talked about identity. We talked about the notion that you are confused about who you are, not just as a person, but look at men and their identity. Your identity has changed so much over the years. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes in at. Now, that does, as Garfield said, it does present a huge opportunity to learn, right? There's a lot that we can learn, not just individually, but within the family dynamics and culturally as well. And I think a lot of what I have seen is that there's a resistance to learn, right? Because we are comfortable in what has been created. And because we have found comfort in that, we are, coming up with different things and rejecting and pushing against different perspectives. So when you hear these different perspectives, which in most cases equate to experiences that have been lived and things of that nature, well, a lot of times we don't necessarily want to hear it. So when I do the beginning part of it, and I talk about the comparison between Mother's and Father's Day, right? It's like, well, it's always been that way. Sure, it's always been that way. But just because it's always been that way doesn't necessarily mean that it's right. And if it's not right, why do we not put forth the energy and effort to correct that which is right, which is wrong, I'm sorry, and make it right? So that takes me to the next question and just being completely transparent, going to answer Christian's question. I think so. Yes, there is. I don't think it's intentionally. I think it's done subconsciously. It is done, and we don't necessarily know that we're doing it. So, in this light, in what ways has generational trauma affected the parenting styles and family dynamics among fathers in the diaspora? Now, this goes on the backside of what we was talking about: slavery, separating fathers from the home, from their children and their wives, and taking fathers and moving them to different plantations. And now, like Gaddy said, you got the wife who has to mother her own children and other people's children and so forth and so on. And then now she is teaching their children grow up to another generation, and they take that lesson into this generation and so forth and so on. And now you're teaching your children. So now, there you have it.
We've said it, and I've heard it plenty of times on this platform. We've talked about a lot of times when we start off as parents, we generally start off parenting like our parents did, or incorporating some of that, or if it was traumatic, then maybe the total opposite. You know what I'm saying? So I think most people kind of fall into those categories or somewhere around there. I think that, when you have generational trauma, when you have a certain behavior or a certain way that your father or your parents parent, I think that you can typically start passing those same things down to the next generation. I think if, you have abuse, not abuse in the home, but like say for you have parent who has substance abuse or something like that, that can cause a lot of trauma. Kids may be separated from the house. The parenting style may be, when dad comes home drunk or intoxicated, he's hitting and throwing things up against the wall and stuff like that, creating a lot of drama within inside of the family. And that, because of that drama and because of how he is when he's drunk, you know what I mean, his parenting style is going to be a little bit different. You know, it could be different because now it could be more aggressive and stuff like that. And then now with those the family dynamics, you know what I mean, I think, you know, sometimes people see that, and I think it just creates a certain image that sometimes people pass along, and then sometimes gets transferred into the diaspora altogether. So that's my little 2 cents.
I think the
Then I
trauma
get to
has.
learn.
I think it has caused abuse, and abuse is not actually knowing how to properly care for or use an object or a person, and that's what's happening. Because whereas generationally, the man say he was at work and he got dogged out at work. Now he comes home and has the pressure of being daddy and making sure that everybody's needs are met, and the frustrations mount up. So now it rolls over into what would normally be like, oh, go ahead. Now he's frustrated and not being in the position of man at work. This is beforehand. He would come home and now he got to put hands on people because this is the only place I can enforce my will. I can be the man of the house and they gonna do what I say, but I get to work and I'm, yes, sir, Mr. Charlie. Now, see, and that has trickled down to where now you have men that think the only time that they can be a man over a woman is when they buck up and show that they're more physically adept to take over things instead of actually bringing down the situation and making it to a cognizant thing where we can think about and where we can talk about and where we can actually navigate through these things without the physical nature. So that's part of why the households are splintered, because traditionally we've been taught that, hey, this is what a man does. This is how a man reacts.
Whew, man. I I see the same events. I see them slightly different. Um, from my vantage point of how I view history. Um, the generational trauma that are passed down, I think where it affects us mostly is because by the time it got to us, it was compound. It wasn't just the last generation's trauma, but it was what was passed down to them as well. I.e., when we talk about emancipation, we're still talking about the black codes, right? And anyone who don't know what those are, those South codes, but before Jim Crow, you had the black codes, laws that were written in these state constitutions on that were separate from uh, our counterparts, right? And so those fathers, if they were present, only knew one way, and that was the way of the plantation: spare the rod, spoil the child, right? So the rod was used because for them it was life or death. I don't want to see my boy sprung up, I, or hung up. I don't want to see. I don't want you to look a certain man in his eyes because of the what could happen because of the repercussion. So certain things were trauma because of the times that they were in, and only way they knew was to beat it into you, because that's how they were broken on the plantation, was by the whip. Um, Next generation, we still inherited the whip and go get your switch, because certain things, because you're not supposed to act a certain way. But you also gotta work harder for education, work harder for this, that work harder generation. I think that coach talks about a lot. I believe that that's a generation where that was real. You had to work 10 times harder. It doesn't matter if you were smarter, you had to work 10 times harder because nothing was going to be handed to you. In fact, it'll be taken away from you. So that compound trauma moved on to the next generation to where it might not be taken away from you, but it'll be a hard time for you to get it. Then and each generation carried a level of trauma that carried down through the generations, and even to this day, we still continue certain cycles because we've allowed things that I would never experience uh, here in 2024 that some of y'all, some of y'all being a decade older than me might have experienced growing up. but I cannot pass that down to the next generation and put you in fear of living in your time because of what happened in my time. And so I think that's where that's how the trauma plays down from generation.
Yeah, I'm again loving all perspectives. Greatly appreciate those um, depictions of this question. I like to look at it from understanding a couple of things. I think there are traumas that exist that stem from these aspects that are deciding factors, and there are some things that were contributing factors, right? Um, were there some things that took place within the home that contributed that were the deciding factor of the trauma that we experience? Absolutely, right? Did some people made some bad decisions within their own home that caused the split of their family? Absolutely, that is definitely a thing. Was there a contributing factor that could have participated in it? Absolutely. No, I think no one is rejecting that notion, and you heard some great point of views here. But the contributing factor wasn't the deciding factor, and the deciding factor, literally, in most cases, was the ending factor, right? So we can talk about the external factors that led to where we are right now, right? And those things are true. I'm not rejecting any of that. So the contributing factors that led to where we are and what we're experiencing, how we view each other, how we view the difference between mothers and fathers, cannot reject that at all. And I think if we do reject that, we are literally doing ourselves a great injustice. But what is the deciding factor? Why are we deciding to continue in something knowing all of this information that we do know? Is it that we're rejecting it? Like, sure, it's just information, but it has not turned into knowledge for me. Therefore, I have never connected the dots and looked at my own behavior and say, you know what? I can see how my behavior is bringing that contributing factor into my life current day, and it has now become a deciding factor in what I'm currently experiencing. Because I think everybody can agree, when I started having kids, no doctor gave me an instruction manual. Here you go. Here's how you raise a boy. Here you go. Here's how you raise a girl. Right? Going back to somebody else's point, I knew without a question what a man was supposed to do. I was supposed to provide and protect. That's the story. That's what every man on this panel will agree to that. We thought that was the truth when we were younger, and couldn't nobody tell us otherwise. So you know what we did? We worked hard. We made sure our family got everything they wanted, and we made sure that nothing got cut off and food was on the table. And we were good. And then next thing you know, this other train wreck came around the corner. Boom, you're emotionally disconnected. Kind of like what me and Garfield talked about this earlier today. You know what I'm saying? Some of us hit burnout. You know what I'm saying? And you'll hear us talk about it later. Some of us experienced burnout in a relationship. Why? Because it was mundane. It was continuous. It was just that. It was just like working a job. So how do we get to the point of moving the family dynamics, as awesome as it's supposed to be, as amazing as a family dynamic can be, to moving it into a space to where it feels like work? Because everybody has an opinion what this person's supposed to be doing. Everybody has a input, buy-in to what this person is supposed to be doing. And if you're not doing what I think you are supposed to be doing the way I envision you doing it, then you are wrong. And now you are an option because there's a system that will support the decision that I am getting ready to make. And now you are going to become the victim of the outcome. So I know I said a lot, but again, I want to get back to the contributing factor and the deciding factor. Why are we still making the decision to be the way we are, knowing all of this great and wonderful information that you gentlemen laid, whichever direction it came from, it doesn't really matter to me, right? It doesn't really matter if we say, slavery is the thing that kind of led us to where we are, or, a man trying to be dominant in his house. It is still a decision that is made. So I am just curious, like, why are we still doing that? And I know you can't answer for everybody, just your opinions.
I will start with saying that it is so many different variables that go into being a dad or being a father. What type of child do you have? How many children do you have? What information do you have to pass on to those children? What information do you not have to pass on to your children? The information that you don't have and the information that you do have is going to be a direct correlation to the type of children that you raise, the atmosphere that you raise your children in. Are y'all in a two-parent household? Are y'all in a two-parent household where both parties are active? Or are y'all in a two-parent household where one is working, one is not? Are you in a one-parent household? Are y'all living with grandma and auntie and uncle and all of those is so many different variables that go into being a dad, to being a father. You know what I mean? So I just want to start with that. You know, you know, I can't really go can't really go any further right now. But it's just so many different variables that go into it. Just being a father in general.
I think that we have a lot of knowledge, yet not a lot of wisdom. So we know a lot more. We know what happened, and we can talk about those things. But when it comes to the application of said knowledge in our lives to process it and make the correct decisions now, we don't do that. We do a lot of talking and little walking. So there's a lot of people out there talking, but not a lot of people actually putting in the effort to make the change that's actually necessary for the change to be seen in our lives and others' lives, because we get lazy and we continue to seek knowledge, and that knowledge don't do anything but sit on the table like a coffee mug or whatever, because we don't take it and actually put it to use.
See, I'm agreeing
I
with
think
you. I'm sorry, great.
I agree with that. I also think that sometimes people are just doing only what they know, right? And they're not willing to go outside of the box, right? So you think about some of those people who were raised in I was raised in a Pentecostal household, right? So there were strict rules. So and nobody wasn't going outside of that. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes it's you can have a thought process of what you feel and what you think is right so much that you're not even willing to let in new information or new perspectives. You know what I mean? Because you think about it, if you have a certain culture, like this is how we do it. I guarantee you right now, like there, I've heard everybody on here say, well, to some extent to say, well, if that was my child, this is how it would be in my household. You know what I'm saying? So we all have set boundaries and created boundaries when it comes to parenting and stuff like that. So sometimes our boundaries are creating a certain level of trauma. You know what I mean? And because that's all we know, and because this is all we know, and this is what we really think and feel how we should raise our kids, we're not letting new information in, even though it may be effective, even though it may be right. A lot of us a lot of people do not agree on this softer, kinder, gentler parenting. They ain't talking about, we ain't having no conversation. It's going to be my way and that's it. You know what I mean? But there are also people on the other side who have that type of relationship with their kids and it's effective and it works for them. So
So
whole
I'm
bunch of
glad,
different variables.
so I'm glad I let you go first because, like, what we'll say will kind of go hand in hand. Like, I'm agreeing with what Roland is saying, but I wouldn't say it's knowledge. I would say that they have a foundational knowledge, and what they're pursuing is information. And so they get a whole bunch of information. That information never makes it to knowledge for them because they never practice that information that they're receiving, because their foundational knowledge is rejecting the application of it. They can spew it, they can quote it, they can talk it, but that's all they can do with it. Their foundational knowledge becomes the mirror, the lens in which they do everything moving forward. Sure, they can talk about general parenting. Sure, they can talk about, you have to express yourself or whatever. But what does that really mean? They can't tell you, simply because they're stuck in that particular mindset. Go ahead, bro. Gaddy, what you got?
Man, you brothers said a lot of it, really, pretty much. When we said why do we still do some things, I think because trial and error. We have a lot of information, but some of the things, because we haven't had enough trial cases in our community, right? Most of the fathers we see were distant, right? They weren't in the home, uh, and along with that, the things our fathers did or didn't do when they were present, we're still trying to sift through it, because half of people saying, our fathers were abusers, and the other half is saying, oh, these kids today are soft because they don't get whipped enough. So a lot of stuff I think is trial and error. So we're and it works. And so I think it's important that fathers continue to stick together and talk and have these conversations, because I need to know, uh, Coach, what you did that worked. Unc, what you did that worked. Bro, what you did that worked, and what you did that didn't work. Y'all got grown kids. I'm still working on it, and so we got to get this information passed down. Y'all have At this point, y'all have wisdom. That knowledge grew. Y'all understand them. Y'all don't, but I'm not. Uh, but I need to hear from y'all, being a younger man with young kids, on how to do it and not be left out there to figure it out on my own. And I think that's part of the problem.
I like that you went there, Gaddy. But I think that sometimes, like you said, you will think that we have all the answers because we got old kids. But we were sometimes stupid in our raising of these kids, and now they just grown. So it's not that we got all the answers. We had that trial and error portion, and we're past that. So sometimes we have the wrong role models. We trying to be like the Huxtables. We trying to be like Family Ties, Family Matters. We take these people and what they did and try to make it applicable to our lives and our children's lives. And that's not the lives that they're living. Instead of looking at where we are in life and saying, okay, how can I move the dynamic of my family forward? I got to take into account where I am, where we are, my knowledge base, and where I'm trying to go, so that now not only am I trying to get more knowledge, I'm trying to apply that knowledge so it's effective in the raising of these children. Because my kids were crazy in high school. And I can tell you about my kids being crazy in high school, but it may not be the same thing you need in your life, in your household.
This is where I pull my Leap Corso card. Not so fast, my friend. I receive half that. There's another side to this coin as well, because a lot of us learn from the mistakes that we made as parents. So as long as we're not teaching the dumb stuff we did as parents when we was trying to figure out this instruction manual that was never given to us. So on the backside of it, and you said it yourself, you said you're a better grandfather than you were a father. So that being said, that's the application of knowledge right there. So when you teach those lessons, when that young man asks you questions about fatherhood, like what did you do, or whatever the case may be, we're not going to teach them what we did. We teach them the lessons that we learned from what we did. And that's the difference between when somebody really cares about the future and what you're working on, right? They teach you the lessons, not necessarily talking so much about when I was a young dad and when I was a young dad. Nobody cares when you was a young dad. What did you learn when you was a young dad? That's the part that we can add. So I'm with you to a certain degree.
Oh, we saying the same thing, because that's why I said some of us get the wrong people and ask for advice.
Gotcha.
Because you can get the wrong. They're going to tell you exactly that versus somebody who's learned from their mistakes and say, okay, this, I would, move this way.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I like all y'all saying. I like everything. The Bible talks about, a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children, right? So that's our grandkids. And I think that we don't really know our impact on being a father until our grandkids are born.
Right.
When how are our grandkids performing? If we as fathers passed on the right things, or if we raised good kids or whatever, I'm just saying, you know what I mean? That mean we passed on the knowledge and information to whereas their kids, our kids are making good decisions with their kids in their life. And it's a long road. We think, I understand and respect everything that Gaddy says. And like Roland says, we don't have all the answers. We have a lot of experience, but we really ain't going to really see the impact until we look at our grandkids, and that's going to show that a direct link based off of what we did as parents. Now, like I said, being a parent, there's a lot to go into it. Everything ain't our fault. And I just want to say that to all the parents out there. Some things are out of our control. Our kids, at the end of the day, we sent them away to school for, 8-9 hours a day for 13 years at least, and they got a lot of influence from other kids, and other parents. All four of us up here, if all our kids going to school, coach allow his kids to do certain things, Gaddy don't, Roland allow his kids to do this, I'll allow my kids to do this. All our kids going to be influenced if they're in the third grade based off of what we allow in our own homes, so that's it.
I love it. I love it. Hey, check it out. Listen, I want to read this real quick, and then we want to get on some of those questions in the chats because I want you guys to understand that we're seeing you. Listen, Bricks is in the area right now to where his reception isn't that good, so we understand that. He talked to me about it long before we started this show tonight, but he said, this is my opinion. Generational trauma is like this heavy shadow that's been hanging over Black families for years. The trauma from slavery, segregation, and ongoing racism gets passed down, affecting how Black dads raise their kids. A lot of African American fathers feel a huge pressure to toughen up their kids for a world that can be really harsh to them just because they're Black. This often means parenting with a focus on discipline, resilience, and staying woke about social injustices. So I wanted to read that because I thought that was a pretty good depiction. And again, I'm sorry he couldn't really add a lot of value simply because of his connection. But brother, we appreciate you, and if you can jump back in, by all means, jump back in. Okay, let's kind of bring some of these questions to the board here because I think they're good questions. So first question is, how do you think the influence disparity was born? I think we kind of touched that already. I think we answered that a few minutes ago when we started talking about slavery, segregation, and so forth on. How do we evaluate what generation started this diaspora?
I'm going to refer to those gentlemen over there.
I think when you do that, you can go down rabbit holes when you're looking at where the start is. So the start is wherever you are. I got it. Like when I realized that I was ignorant, I was dumb in certain areas and needed to improve, needed to show, gain knowledge and show wisdom in parenting. That was my start. I couldn't blame my mother. I couldn't blame my father, my granny, and all them other people. I had to look in the mirror and say, what is it that I'm not doing? And how is it that I'm inadequate as a parent?
Gad, you good at that? Okay, I'll jump in. So with this question, I only want to evaluate something that I want to improve. So when I understand what a diaspora is, it is pretty much the dispersion of a culture, right? I'm not looking to improve upon that. I'm looking to change that. So I don't necessarily want to evaluate who started it. I want to bring most of us the ones who are willing, I want to bring us back together again so we can understand what our culture really can be when we understand what unity looks like, when we understand what solidarity looks like, and things of that nature. What does it look like for me to help you just because of who you are, just because we're in the same culture, because you're in the same neighborhood, or whatever. So I don't want to really, me personally, I don't want to evaluate where it started from. I want to be a part of the change. I want to change it so that we can relinquish the dispersion and bring us back together again as best we possibly can. Gad, you good now? Or you still struggle streaming?
Both. No, but my bad. Uh, the book of James, I believe, chapter 1, verse 1, it reads, to 12 tribes which are scattered abroad. And that's how he started his letter. So when people say, when you start asking the question, what generation started the diaspora, I think it goes beyond the limits of our history books or our ability to pinpoint. Because as Coach pointed out, it is the dispersion of a group of people from their homeland, I guess you would say, right? So there's no telling how far back this go. There's no year marker as to where this started, but diaspora means that we are spread throughout the four corners. Uh, to that I got on that.
All right, very good. Next question is, do you think that the wait until your father gets home statement and the disciplinarian role the father played affected the relationship between him and his children?
I think it affected the relationship between the mother and her children, honestly, because I think when you do that, you 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 lose some of your authority. You lose your authority. What you're saying is you can't handle the situation anymore, so I have to divert the discipline to your father because I can't handle the situation. So I think it kind of does that because I mean I see it all the time in school. You know what I mean? Um, I'm gonna call your parents, stuff like that. And after a while, it just becomes white noise. So I think it kind of affects more so the relationship between the mother and the children and her ability to remain in control of the situation.
I think that stemmed from times where it was the father had to come home and control the boys because it takes a man to raise a man, not him come home and put them girls in check because she would put the girls in check because she's trying to raise women and he's trying to raise men. And if he was smelling himself or whatever, then he would put that in check. But I do think Gaddy went to James, I go to Proverbs. The book of Proverbs is instructions. And when you read those instructions, it's telling that son, listen to the words of your mother. Son, your mother this. And it speaks of wisdom as being a female. And so when you gotta say, wait till I call or listen to me after this, that, and the other, I don't see you doing your part because sometimes you got to check it when it happens. Check it. I ain't got time to be waiting on nobody. I'll check it again when I get home.
Y'all had some good upbringings. I don't know. I got it from Mr. Robert down the street. Then I got snatched home and drug home to my mama, who gave me a good 2-3 pieces. And then when my daddy got home, I got it again. So, yeah, when my daddy got home, it was just the worst of it. But it was already, the layers was already getting peeled back. But I could see where that would kind of shift the dynamics of the relationship between both parents. And so I'm glad Unc hit that, both parents and the children, because it tells me that I can get away with things if daddy's not here, you know. And then it tells me that my father is really just an iron fist. And so when I become an adult, who I am around this hardly with that, you know, passed away. There's certain things I didn't do in front of my father, like just because he was my father. Same thing with my mother. But I think we, we have to have an understanding of what was going on. And so instead of just saying, you know, it destroyed or it helped benefited the relationship between the kids, it's to understand of why did we wait till dad got home, right? Because there, and I think it's like Roland said, especially with boys, there's some things that mama couldn't do. You know, some of us who were raised with our mamas predominantly in the home, when we got whipped by mom, we cried just so she would stop, not because it hurt, because we knew if we didn't cry, she was gonna figure something else out. So we cried just so she could stop. But it didn't bother it. It didn't hurt us, and it didn't stop us from doing what we wanted to do. So I think it comes to a level of understanding of why things happen too.
The answer is yes. Mom and dad is a unit. If you're not behaving like a unit, it's going to affect the relationship for both people, the mother and the father. I like where Garfield started at because he's absolutely right. But the answer is yes, because nobody wants to be the bad guy as a father. I appreciate y'all. Listen, I appreciate y'all well elaborate responses, but I'm gonna respond like a man. I don't want to always be the bad guy. That's just the truth. I don't want to walk in the house and be told nothing but bad stuff about my kids. Tell me something they did good today. So the answer is yes. Okay, next question. I'm going to jump on this one. What if one does not realize that they're blocking growth? How can we expand their awareness? Well, that all depends. Whether they're realizing it and they want to change, right? Then they will listen to somebody who is trying to help them. If they don't realize it, and if they don't want to change, you can't. I'm just going to be completely transparent with that one, because that leads into your next question. Many are blinded by their living environment. If they see everyone around them doing the same thing, how can they realize that there are other techniques to get outside their environment? You got to get information.
That's what I'm talking about, being boxed in to the culture or whatever, and not looking to see new and different perspectives on something like that. This how grandma did it. This how auntie do it. This how we do it. This is how we raise our kids. Everybody does it. We whoop hand pots up in here. Everybody whoop hand pots. You know, I'm just saying, it's something that was passed down, whether you agree or not. Some people believe that was traumatic for the kids. Just being honest.
Yeah, we did what we saw our parents do and their parents, and hey, go get that switch. Do
Everybody
whatever.
got that switch.
Right.
Yeah.
Until you got around somebody else and say, hold up, I would have appreciated if this would have happened. So now the growth comes in, so you can implement this in your family and change that dynamic. Because I ain't about to beat these kids senseless, have all these whips on them just because they ate all the doggone Crunchy Munch.
Hey, I'm gonna throw Charlotte Jordan up under the bus, right? So I think I remember the last time I got a whooping. She just whooped me, and I just pretty much just looked at her. Like, so what do you do now when the whoopings don't work no more? I think I'm about 12 or 13. So you get a whooping, and okay, that was it. So I think that was the last time she whooped me.
I'm sorry, man.
It had no effect on me anymore. You know what I mean? And I remember when my sons got to that point, when I remember my ex-wife, when they got a couple whoopings, and my son was just like, whatever. It's like, I was like, look, you can't whoop him no more. Like, it's ineffective. Like, you got to change up your parenting methods.
Miss Uncle Junior, don't laugh at your husband. He gonna get in trouble by his mama. Listen,
She's probably gonna text
the thing
him.
that came to my mind is where everybody has seen the video where the mama go to beat the son, and he grabbed the belt and he started laughing. Did he give her that look? And then next thing you know, she just unloads on him. So I'm sorry, that's the first thing that came to my mind. You said that. Yeah, man. I agree, and I think this is a great segue into this particular area right here, because unconscious bias and their effect on the perceptions of Black fatherhood. Like, how does unconscious bias and stereotype impact the way Black fathers are perceived and treated in their homes and the community?
Before we answer this, can one of y'all kind of answer what are some of the unconscious biases or stereotypes?
Oh, that's good.
Before.
I think some of the unconscious bias or stereotypes of the Black father would be that he's almost an absentee parent. He just comes around when he's just here to provide this money, or because of single parenting, most of the time the child lives with the mother. So sometimes the father's not necessarily around when things happen. So he shows up, and like Dwayne was saying, he get the report, and now he has to act or enact. So the bias is that you are only concerned with the discipline portion, or you aren't around, so you don't even have a right to do this. Whereas, you have those. I think we push a lot of negative stereotypes. Nobody pushes positive stereotypes of Black people in general. So you push a lot of negative. So it's a lot of negativity going towards the father in the first place. So whenever he comes around to do anything for the children in the community, it's like it's not enough. He could be doing all he can, but it's not enough. So I don't know if that helped.
Yep, sure did. Thanks.
Enough Gaddy struggle streaming. I give you one. He don't want his kids. That is a huge stereotype, a huge misinterpretation. Like and again, I want to make sure that everybody understand this is not an all-inclusive statement. I'm not making an all-inclusive statement about anything that I say. But one of the biggest things is that as a Black father, he does not want his kids. He doesn't want to be around his kids. His kids is an option. That is a huge stereotype.
And don't let him have kids with somebody else. Now he chose them over you. And and that's pushed by the other parent most of the time. So instead of raising healthy children, now you already fractured the relationship with the father. So the listening ear is like, I ain't listening to that Negro nowhere.
All right. I think I'm ready now. So I think with everything you guys have said, I think with some of these, I think sometimes it can cause us to the fathers who are involved, I think sometimes can cause us to overcompensate for certain things, right? Because of these stereotypes and stuff like this. All right. So the absentee father thing, I'm gonna talk just about that piece. So the absentee father piece. So if that is what's going on in the community, that Black fathers are not around, right? So if I don't want to be part of that stereotype, then that may cause me to maybe stay in a relationship longer with somebody that I may not want to. It may affect. Now I'm going extra harder on my kids because I don't want them to be a stereotype, or I don't want to be that absentee father. So it may cause me to parent in a different way. So that's a little bit my kind of my spin on it, based off of the information that you guys shared. So I appreciate all you guys' feedback in response to the question.
I think it affects the way that we are perceived when we attempt to go against the stereotype. think the unconscious biases puts us in a box sometimes. For instance, when I first came back to Texas, right? Trying to tread carefully, 'cause I don't want to put, nobody in a bad light. But there was a struggle with me trying to be involved in dating, because or I didn't love my kids. I was absent. No, because you left. Not I didn't want to, but now that I'm here, now that I left active duty prematurely to be here, I had to struggle and fight with everyone. You know, this mindset was, and I'm not really trying to get sympathy. So I hope nobody's looking at it as that, because we fight the good fight over here. But I kept running into brick walls because the stereotypes or the unconscious biases were causing them to reject my availability, to reject my ability to be in scenarios, to discipline, to show up to meetings, to do, because it's like, what is he trying to prove? I'm not trying to prove nothing. I'm just trying to be there. So as I'm listening to that question, that's exactly where my mind goes. I think it creates this mindset that if he's trying to be there, something is up. He's trying to do something, or he's trying, because that's not normal.
Yeah, I get that. I think there's a number of stereotypes that biases or stereotypes that can be considered. Whether we're talking, just things such as hypersexuality, anything that you tie to a black male, for the most part. So anything along the lines of like hypersexuality, responsibility, things of that nature. For me, I like the notion of a projected narrative, right? Just because the relationship between man and woman did not work, that is not indicative of the relationship between mother and child and father and child. So if our relationship didn't work, don't project how you feel on the man and cause difficulties with that man trying to be a part of that child's life. In fact, the most humbling act that probably needs to take place is that regardless of how you feel, be an advocate of that child having a healthy relationship with both parents, right? So I think that's where I will go with it as far as these biases and stereotypes. Again, sure, you can find any excuse out there under the sun and tie it to the fact that he is a black male by saying he's hypersexual, by saying he's irresponsible, by saying he chose work over being at home, by saying all of these things. Oh, I'm sorry, I left one out. He chose her over the kids, right? All of those things, can be a thing, but it is a projected narrative that you're putting out there in the ears of the child, right? And then that can influence the way that child now see his father. That's a very dangerous game to play. So I want to put that out there. Can we? Yeah, let's go back and grab. There we go. Do y'all believe the reason why the fathers are willing to bend the knee is due to the target from both government, i.e., child support, and society? So first and foremost, let me commend you on the effective use of bend the knee, right? Because again, I am a Game of Thrones fan, and anytime I hear bend the knee, I get excited. I'm curious, gentlemen, what do you think?
I don't know what bend the knee means.
Bow down.
Submit.
Oh,
Yes. Been there. Done that. Didn't want to, hey, I extra night here. I try to do a little extra, and I try to keep. We're almost put into a position of submission to keep her almost happy, so that she won't go back and renew it and get it moved up. Because in Texas, I know because of my former, she would go every 3 years. I can get an increase. She knew it, and every 3 years she was in there. And the military you don't pay it, they take it. And I think you're almost in a position where you want to keep her quiet, want to keep her happy. And so she'll ask, hey, can we go half on this? Like, yeah, dog, I'm paying you rent your car note. Like, why we got to go half on this? But if you speak out, if you speak up and stand up for yourself, then it's like, oh, okay. And so the system and her, they almost have your kahunas in a chokehold in their hands to make sure that you do what they deem you worthy of doing, and it neuters you as a father, as a parent.
I definitely think this has some merit to it. I definitely understand and agree with what Roland is saying. I think that when right, it depends on how much money you got to pay. Like that can mean the difference between going back and living with your mama. You know what I'm saying? Or living with somebody else you really don't want to, depending on how much money you earn and what state you're living in and how many kids you got. And then society, right? So you don't want to be, if you're a halfway decent guy, you don't want to be labeled as the baby daddy. I mean, not the baby daddy, but the dude who ain't paying child support. You know what I mean? Or the deadbeat dad. You don't want to be labeled that by society, because if you're not paying child support, if you're not involved, regardless of whether or not you're allowed to or not, because there are some people who fall into that category, and you don't want to be, like I said, if you're a halfway decent dude, you got to think about child support, if you government employee or state employee, and then if, like I said, a society piece. So absolutely.
Hey, I'm gonna keep it real. Like this thing right here, this is the thing that keeps people married way
Yep.
beyond their own interpretation of understanding when that relationship over. Simply
Yep.
because they already know what the punishment looks like.
Yep. I mean, they imagine being, sergeant first class, married in the army with 4 kids, bro. Like, and that retirement on the line, that child support on the line, all of that stuff. So a lot of times people stay in these relationships is financially.
I was paying over $1,800 a month. I was E5, and I was paying. Yeah, I make 6. I made 6, and either way, and I was paying one a lot more than the rest because of she could affect my everything else a little more. I want to keep her calm because she was sporadic, and I ain't need her messing other stuff up. So I'm giving her like boom, like okay, shut up, hush money. And then she ended up, the situation happened. She ended up doing some stuff and went to the people and said I wasn't doing anything, but I kept records. I sent it bank to bank. And they say, well, all he got to pay you is $165 a month. Like, oh, you done chopped your own hand off. So it happens.
Yeah. So
That
let me
part.
let's press forward because I want to at least try to get into other questions before we close this out. So the next section is the silent struggles, emotional and mental health. That said, what are some of the what are some of the unique emotional and mental health challenges that Black fathers face, and how do these challenges impact their role within the family?
Oh man, let's talk about the ability to having to hold things in. And it kind of goes back to the other question. Some of those stereotypes is of the strong Black man. So if you want to be a strong Black man, you can't show a lot of weakness. No one wants to see their leader crying and being all emotional and different things like that. And when sometimes for certain people, when men sometimes can't express themselves emotionally in a healthy way, then sometimes they hold things in, which can contribute to a certain level of mental health and cause some mental health challenges in their life. And when you are struggling with a certain level of mental health, or you can't be open, or you can't be, who you are in your own home based off of whatever reasons, then I think that impacts your role and your ability to be able to lead and to be a father and impact all of your roles within that family. So that's why, certain platforms like this and elevated dialogue and what, some of us do on social media is why some of these platforms were created, because we understand that there's a gap and there is a need for men to be able to express themselves emotionally, and have a safe place to be able to conversate, because everybody don't have a wolf pack. You know what I'm saying? So they need a place to go.
It's a what unique emotional. So I will speak for myself, right? On the job and in public, I try to carry myself a certain way. I realized early on in life that just broad wise, I wasn't tall, but I was one of the biggest kids my age. Especially in high school and middle school. Um, so I had to be careful how I retaliated. But I learned to be, because I always as the aggressor. Um, and when I went to high school, I moved to Staten Island, where it was multicultural, and I realized that when white kids want to be funny, I'm sorry, when other kids want to be funny and say the N word, um, I was not supposed to retaliate. But I did. I was supposed to just take it on the chin like a good sport, I guess. Because the moment I would turn around and tell them to watch their mouth, I was an aggressor. I was taken into security office and put in handcuffs before even fighting. Uh, because so so as an adult, I realized, for at least for me, that hasn't changed. When I'm on the job and people come to work and or come to my job and they want to be disrespectful, when I redirect their aggression, I'm the aggressor. I'm the angry big black guy. And so that so as that has to be suppressed. And then when I come home, somehow it has to disappear. Because when I get home, now I have to talk about what the wife got going on, how her day went. I gotta play with the girls and tend to the boys. So a lot of the things that I had to do, and I'm just speaking from my vantage point, I have to let go and be in. I lay it down, go on now. And I come back and I play with them. So it gets you into a little mental fatigue by the time you make it home and get in front of your family.
Oh, Gaddy, your internet be stuttering. Uh, I think mental health challenges, sometimes you can have an inadequacy about yourself. You can be hopeless, feel hopeless. You can feel worthless as a parent, as a father. And at some points, a parent can be suicidal. They can get to the point to where they feel like the insurance money will be better off for the kids than my presence, because I'm not allowed to be in their lives how I want to be because of society and because of that woman, because that's who she becomes, that woman. So that's what I say about that.
Oh, that was
Bro,
good, bro.
I
Good.
know he went to the extreme, but that's a very, very real thought right there. And I'm just very real thought. And I think a lot of men experience that.
Hey, man, I'm one of them. I'm just gonna keep it real.
Well, I'm two of them. Dang, all three of us?
Yeah, man.
Sheesh.
Listen, yeah, I keep trying to tell
It's
you, like,
crazy.
it's and the most crazy part of it is that when you share it with people, they reject it. That's the worst part of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's the other part. So when we start talking about these unique emotional and mental health challenges, that's what we're talking about. The fact that I am expected to listen to everything that's going on with you and accept it for face value. But when I start sharing what's going on with me, oh, well, you a man, get over it, toughen up, you know what I'm saying? Things of that nature. Like, no, that's disingenuous. That has absolutely nothing to do with the relationship was supposed to be, and it surely is not what the parenting relationship is all about. That becomes a huge problem. Oh yeah, one more. Um, I don't have emotions, right? But if I express emotions, they're not real emotions. You're just acting that way. You're acting out, kind of going back to what Gaddy said, like you're just angry. No, you're expecting my emotions to be like your emotions, right? My emotions aren't supposed to be like your emotions. But just because I don't respond to things the way that you do does not mean that I am emotionless. Just because I don't get excited about the things that you get excited about doesn't mean I am emotionless. So again, there's that issue, that challenge, that tug of war, that joust that happens within the family dynamic. And going back to what Brother Roland just said, like absolutely, it's like, man, what am I here for? This is a waste of time. This is pointless. You know what I'm saying? You'd just be better off I just cut you a check every month and then just go and live by myself and eat ramen noodle every day. Like that's really what it equates to. And so things like that, like I do really believe that even though it happened in the past, I still think things like that happen in today's time. So I want to get to the point of how do we fix it? Like what steps can be taken, right, to challenge and change the negative stereo. The question, please. What steps can be taken to challenge and change the negative stereotypes and unconscious biases about Black fatherhood in broader society?
I'll start and I'll keep it short because of the time, and I'm gonna go really generic with this, and this is something that we see a lot of people do it, and that is being engaged in the community, right? Just being a positive example, or being a positive role model in the community is sometimes good enough. Being a good representation of a black man or a black father on social media, being a good representation when you're out at Walmart or when you're in Lowe's, you know what I mean? So that right there, I think just in itself is just being a good role model, and whatever that looks like to you, be that.
I think not only add to what you were saying, I think we need to be men of our word. Like, and that's not only for the bad stuff. Like, oh, I said I'm gonna whoop you. Okay, I said I was gonna come get you. I said I was gonna spend time with you. I, we have to do those things and not just try to make up for everything on special days. Like, okay, yeah, birthdays and all that. But sometimes I gotta spend time with a kid, not giving that kid the expectation that they're gonna get a toy, that they're gonna get this or whatever. We just gotta go walk down the street. We go into the park and walk around and talk to see where their head is. Because when you spend time with them, then they can understand and know where your heart is versus, oh, well, daddy coming, he said he gonna do this and he said he gonna do that. Because you become like that fat white man coming down the chimney at times. You become that giver instead of that person that just wants to get to know that where they are in life and help them grow versus, the giver all the time.
I think I'll go ahead and go. I think um, for this particular question, I think it's important to actually have conversation. Like sit down in the beginning and have conversation. If you are with someone, we should get to the point to where if we're going to pursue having a child together, we need to talk about what parenthood looks like before that actually happens. Now I got it. There's oops, oh my, we didn't take the necessary precautionary measures. But then if that's the case, then have the conversation in the pre-stages of said relationship. Like, what if this were to happen? Like, what does fatherhood look like to you? What does motherhood look like to you? What happens if we don't make it as a relationship? Have those conversations up front. I get it. That does not guarantee that somebody's not going to get in their feelings and not necessarily do the things that they're supposed to do, but at least you have an idea of what that looks like and who you're working with. Some people tell you the truth straight up front, and that's okay. Be okay with their truth and make the decision that works for you. Also, with that being said, I think we need to come to the table collectively, not just people who are, pursuing relationships in the early stages, but just the community. Going back to Garfield point, the community need to come to the table collectively so we can have honest conversations back and forth. Go back to the notion of males training males and females training females, males nurturing females and females nurturing males. That's the way. We need to stop this cross boundary shots that we're taking at one another, thinking that our instructions are making a difference. It does not. It does not. Your instructions as a woman to me means nothing because you have never walked a day in my shoes as a man. So at the end of the day, it's not that I know I can't hear what you're saying, but in my point, I'm gonna ask you a question. What point of reference are you getting this from? Because you can tell me you had a great daddy. I don't really care how great you think your daddy was. Let me go talk to about 5 other people. I don't think their perspective will be the exact same thing. You have to realize that there are some people in our lives that we have given grace to just simply because of the relationships that we have with them. So we got to get out of the stage of over glorifying our whatever it is, and then recognize that being a mother and being a father is an honorable thing, and we need to recognize it from the perspective of the Creator who told us what they really are. So that's just my point of view. Anything else you guys wanted to add real quick before we move on into final thoughts? No? Okay. Very good. I appreciate that. Listen, as always, we greatly appreciate you guys. We know we went over, but we thought this conversation was just this important. So with that being said, this takes us to our bittersweet moment, which is our final thoughts.
Um, we all matter. We all play a part. We're all a team together. Um, Now, there's a lot that can be said from a biblical aspect, right? But we have to do more than just repair just just one side. The whole needs to be repaired, but it does start with the head. So we need to get our community, our house back in order, and that happens if we repair the head. We're living in a desert as a community. That's all I have.
I think we need to seek therapy, seek mental health that heals, not just to be checking the block. And learn your children, learn your family dynamic, and stop trying to compare them to everybody else's children and everybody else you see, because your children may have experienced some things that they really don't know how to articulate, and you don't know anything about it. So when you find out about it, you, instead of navigating them through it, you shove it, sweep it under the rug, and be the man and stop trying to just look like the man. If you don't know, say you don't know. Find out. Find you a good bunch of brothers, a good bunch of men that can help you navigate through this walk. Not people that just care to talk about things and talk about you and talk about your children, but people that have a care and concern for you and your family and want to see you all healthy. And that'll help, because we have to be an ever learning people so that we can not just have knowledge, but have the wisdom to use said knowledge so that we can build healthy families. So we won't be talking about this same issue 30 years from now within our family, but we can help others.
The title of today's podcast is What They Don't Tell You About Being a Dad in the Diaspora. And I got two things. they never tell you, or they don't tell you that this job never ends. You know, a lot of us were kind of under the impression that once someone turns 18 or they graduate high school, that that's pretty much the end of it. The kids leave the house and your job is done. When in reality, what happens is your roles change. You know, how you parent and the things that you do changes, and but you never stop being a parent. So that's one thing they don't tell you. Another thing they don't tell you is that you're supposed to be a teacher. You know, not only we're supposed to be a parent, but we're supposed to teach certain things. You know, now what we're supposed to teach is up for debate, but we are supposed to be able to teach. And they also, you know, along with that is we have to learn how to teach. You know, a lot of us don't know, or we wasn't taught the skills to be able to apply the knowledge that, or the information that we get. You know, so now we got some new information about how to be a parent, but we don't necessarily know how to apply it. So I just wanted to say those two things, and that's my final thought.
Yeah, my final thoughts. I'm gonna try to keep it short. I think going off of, because I like where Garfield went. I love everybody's comment, of course. I would say the thing that they don't tell you as a father or a dad in the diaspora is that it's a thankless job. It's rare that you see a child get on TV and wave at the camera and say, "Hi, Dad." But you know, at the end of the day, we don't stop pushing, we don't stop pursuing, we don't stop doing the things that we're supposed to do. Um, it's one of those positions. It's one of those things to where you're constantly learning. You're constantly learning about yourself. You're constantly learning about your child. So I think it's important when we understand that. And the last point I will make is that the dad is a part of the unit. The other part of the unit is mom. And if you do not behave as a unit, the child suffers. I don't care how many Jordans they got. I don't care how many pair. I don't even know what the stylish jeans are these days. I don't care how many they got in the closet. It doesn't matter what it looks like on the outside. The only thing that matters is what's on the inside. And when one parent, one part of that team is missing and does not have input, then you're damaging the child in the long run. And I think that is the most important thing that they do not tell you about parenting in the diaspora. So that being said, man, I want to thank everybody who was here, everybody who participated, everybody on the panel, everybody, Bugle Boy, everybody who's on the panel, everybody who is in the chats. Listen, we appreciate you guys. You guys added such value. Again, we understand their different perspectives, but again, I kind of told you in the beginning that that's what this conversation was going to be like, because again, you're hearing from a panel of men about fatherhood, and every man on this panel is a father. But we always welcome your feedback, your comments, your questions. Wonderful questions tonight. We greatly appreciate that. I put in the chats just now, there's a link to a free download about authentic fatherhood. Is a self-reflective questionnaire. If you are a young man who don't have any kids, I invite you to do that. You don't have to wait to become a father to learn about fatherhood. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that we made in our generation, right? No one really taught us about fatherhood. I can't speak for mothers, right? Nobody really taught us about fatherhood before they became a father. The only thing I would hear is that wait till you become a father, right? So download that, take it on your own time, do some self-reflection, and then learn what it would be like. Like imagine yourself in the future being a father, and then go from that point moving forward. So listen, we appreciate you. We value you. Again, sorry we went a little long, but that being said, I think the information was valuable. You were valuable. So that being said, have a great rest of your evening. Have a fantastic weekend, and let the best version of yourself be a blessing to somebody else.